The fluorescent lights above the Westfield police station flickered in their usual, uneven rhythm, casting sharp, sterile shadows across the small room. The walls, painted an institutional shade of beige, seemed to close in on Emily Grayson as she sat handcuffed to a metal chair, her wrists raw from the cold steel biting into her skin. A single fan spun lazily in the corner, barely moving the stagnant air, yet its hum seemed deafening against the deafening silence that filled the station. Emily's chest heaved in shallow breaths. 26 years of life, years that had been ordinary, uneventful, dedicated to nursing, to caring for others, had led her here, and she had no idea why. Detectives circled her like predators. Their eyes were sharp, scrutinizing, expecting the breakdown, expecting the confessions, expecting tears. Detective Morrison, a burly man with a permanent scowl etched into his face, slammed a folder onto the metal table. The sound made Emily flinch. "You know why you're here, Emily," he said, voice low, almost venomous. "We have all the evidence we need. Everything points to you." Emily shook her head, the motion small, trembling. "No, you don't. You have the wrong person." Her voice cracked on the last word, brittle, desperate, but the detectives didn't flinch. "You knew this day would come," Morrison said, leaning close, his breath hot and slightly sour. "Everyone in this town knew about your ex's little operation, and somehow you were involved." Emily swallowed against the lump in her throat. It was true she had once dated Derek Marlowe, a man who had a reputation for trouble the moment he walked into a room. But Emily had left that life behind the second she realized how dangerous he was. She had nothing to do with his schemes, or so she told herself every night when sleep came reluctantly. "Your fingerprints aren't even on anything," Emily protested. "I've never been inside his apartment. I don't know what you're talking about." Morrison sneered, shaking his head. "We'll see about that. The K9 unit will confirm everything, and once he signals, well, that's it for you." Emily froze. A sharp, icy sensation ran down her spine. The words K9 unit carried a weight she couldn't explain, a sense of imminent danger but also recognition. Something in her gut told her this wasn't a routine procedure. The door creaked and Coda entered. Even in the dim, flickering light, the German Shepherd's presence was imposing. Massive and muscular, with a black and tan coat that shimmered under the fluorescent glare, Coda had a reputation that preceded him. Local news clips played of him tracking suspects, sniffing out narcotics, alerting officers to bombs before they detonated. He was flawless, unerring, and everyone in the station knew it. Emily's breath hitched. The officer who handled him, a young man named Ryan Hale, spoke softly to the dog, and Coda's ears pricked up, his body tensing like a coiled spring. The room seemed to shrink. Every eye was on Emily, watching her, waiting for the inevitable reaction. The officers expected fear, guilt, panic. They expected her to flinch or whimper. But Emily, she didn't. She leaned forward slightly, the metal of the chair digging into her thighs. Her lips moved, forming words so quietly that only she knew them. Two words, words that carried a lifetime of unspoken memories, words that Coda would recognize even if the humans couldn't. The room held its breath. Coda's tail twitched. The slightest movement, almost imperceptible but enough for Ryan Hale to notice. Emily's eyes stayed on the floor. Her hands, cuffed and trembling, rested on her lap. And then, almost imperceptibly, Coda took a step forward, slowly, carefully, stopping just short of her feet. His massive head tilted, ears flicking, tail wagging gently. A gesture that, if anyone had seen it before in his line of work, would have seemed impossible. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. What is he doing?" Hale's voice was tight, controlled, but laced with unease. I don't know. That command isn't in his training. He shouldn't be reacting like that." Emily swallowed, her heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at her to stay calm, to breathe, to not betray what she knew. But inside, a storm was raging. She remembered Coda from years ago, a puppy with soft brown eyes, timid, scared. She had encountered him once in a volunteer program when she was 16, helping with abused and neglected animals. Something in her childhood, something buried, had taught her how to speak to dogs, to understand their subtle signals, to see fear and comfort in their eyes. And now here he was, grown into a full adult, a trained police dog, yet responding to her, not as a suspect, but as someone who needed protection. The detectives exchanged glances, a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "He's guarding her," Morrison muttered, disbelief thick in his tone. Emily kept her gaze down, heart thundering in her chest. She knew the next few minutes would change everything. She could feel it, the shift in the air, the electricity in the room. Everyone was waiting for her to make a mistake, to panic, to cry, to confess something that wasn't true. But Coda was giving her a shield, a signal that the truth was on her side. Morrison slammed his fist against the table. "Officer Hale, do something. He can't just—" Coda ignored him. He sat firmly, head low, eyes fixed on Emily, tail wagging gently like a pendulum measuring tension. He nudged her hand, then her knee, whining softly. It was not the behavior of a police dog ready to accuse. It was the behavior of a companion, a protector, a guardian. The officers were speechless. Emily finally lifted her gaze, locking eyes with the massive dog she remembered as a frightened puppy, now fully grown and trained, yet still somehow familiar. The memory of his small, trembling paws in the volunteer shelter flooded her. She remembered comforting him, whispering softly, teaching him the command words, the ones that signaled safety. And now, years later, those same words, just 2 syllables, had bridged the gap between past and present, training and instinct, fear and trust. A reporter from the local news, allowed into the room to observe high-profile cases, fumbled for a camera. She captured the moment. A young woman, handcuffed, sitting calmly as a massive K9 refused to obey the authorities, his instincts aligning with hers instead. Morrison's face was red with frustration. "This is impossible. Dogs don't." Emily interrupted, her voice small but steady, shaking slightly only from adrenaline. "He's not here for you, he's here for me." The room went silent. Every officer, every detective, every observer felt it. The air had changed. The balance of power had shifted. Coda's posture was unwavering. His loyalty was undeniable. For the first time since being dragged into the station, Emily felt something resembling hope. Not blind, naive hope, but sharp, tense, and trembling, like the first light of dawn after a night of terror. And just as the lead detective opened his mouth to challenge her claim, Coda barked, once, firmly, decisively. The sound echoed off the walls, a punctuation mark in a story no one yet understood. All eyes turned to Emily. What just happened?" an officer whispered. Emily exhaled, finally breaking her rigid stance. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried weight, history, and the secret she had carried for a lifetime. She leaned forward slightly, the cuffs scraping against her wrists, and said, "Because I know him." The words hung in the air. The silence that followed was thick, oppressive, electric. Everyone in the room understood this wasn't just a routine arrest anymore. Something bigger, deeper, and far more shocking was about to unfold. And at that moment, Emily realized her life would never be the same again. Because the courtroom, the city, and even Coda himself were about to reveal secrets no one could have anticipated. The door of the Westfield police station swung open, and Coda padded into the room, his massive paws clacking against the cold tile floor. He moved with the precision of a soldier, every muscle taut, every sense alert. Emily's stomach clenched at the sight of him. The dog that had been a timid, nervous puppy in her teenage years was now a fully trained, unstoppable police K9. And yet, there was something familiar in the way he moved, something that made her heart skip a beat. Detective Morrison, still red-faced from the previous standoff, gestured to the dog. "Coda, do your thing." Coda paused, his ears flicking. His dark eyes locked onto Emily, scanning her body, her hands, her expression. Something unexplainable flickered in his gaze, a recognition that wasn't supposed to exist. Hale, Coda's handler, frowned. "That's not right," he muttered. "He shouldn't be doing that." Emily's pulse thundered. She swallowed, remembering the two words she had whispered just moments ago, words meant to calm, to signal trust, to show safety. And somehow, Coda had responded, despite years and training that had nothing to do with her. He had never failed to obey police commands, yet now he was defying them. "Step back," Morrison barked. "This is a police dog. He obeys commands, not civilians." Coda ignored him. Slowly, deliberately, he circled Emily's chair, tail wagging gently but in a controlled rhythm. His nose brushed her hand, nudging her lightly, as if reminding her that she wasn't alone. The room fell into a thick, uneasy silence. The other officers exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or a threat. Emily's breathing steadied. For the first time since her arrest, she felt a flicker of control, a tether to reality that hadn't been there since the metal cuffs had dug into her wrists. "Sir," Hale said quietly, tension vibrating in his voice, "he's not reacting the way he should. That command, it's not in his active police training. He's responding to her." Emily froze at the words. That confirmation, the impossibility of it, made her stomach drop and her pulse spike. No one in the station could understand what was happening. Only she did. She had trained with Coda briefly, years ago, in a volunteer trauma program for at-risk youths and abused animals. They had been paired together once, just long enough for her to recognize his cues, for him to recognize her touch, her voice. And now, all that memory had come rushing back, sharper than a knife. The puppy who had trembled under her hands, the tiny black and tan body shivering with fear, the soft nudge against her palm when he needed reassurance. Coda's head tilted, ears flicking as if listening for something only he could hear. His gaze never wavered from Emily. A low, warning growl rumbled in his chest, but it wasn't directed at her. It was aimed at the officers. The growl was subtle, controlled, precise, a signal of alertness, of suspicion, of recognition of danger. Morrison's face turned pale. "He's guarding her." "Yes," Hale said softly, almost in disbelief. "He shouldn't be. Not like this. I've never seen him react this way outside of specialized trauma response drills, and even then," he trailed off, eyes wide as the dog nudged Emily again, staying firmly by her side. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. Every nerve in her body screamed with the tension of the moment. She knew what was coming, even if the officers didn't. Coda wasn't reacting to guilt. He wasn't reacting to evidence. He was reacting to danger, and instinctively he knew Emily was at risk. Morrison's voice was sharp, commanding. "Emily, stand up, step away from the chair." Emily shook her head, barely audible, her voice trembling. "I can't. He won't let me." The officers froze. Hale's face went ashen. Coda's obedience had always been absolute. He never refused a command. But now, in front of everyone, he refused to leave Emily. Instead, he pressed his massive body close to her, his protective instincts overriding everything he had been trained to do. Morrison slammed his fist on the table. "This is unacceptable. Get him under control." Two officers stepped forward, attempting to guide Coda away, but he barked sharply, warning them off. The sound echoed like a whip through the small room. Emily flinched but didn't move. Instead, she spoke softly, the words carrying across the tense air. "Sit, Coda, stay." The dog obeyed, not because of the standard police training, but because of recognition, trust, and memory. His massive body sank into a controlled sit, but his eyes never left hers. The room was deathly silent, except for the soft whine escaping his throat, a sound of loyalty, concern, and something primal that no human could replicate. Emily's voice barely rose above a whisper. "He's not here for you. He's here for me." The statement sent a ripple through the room. Gasps echoed. Detective Morrison turned toward Hale. "Explain yourself now." Hale shook his head, his hands trembling. I can't. This is beyond protocol, beyond training. Coda, He's only ever done this in trauma drills, never during a real arrest, and certainly never for a suspect. Emily's pulse raced. Every eye in the room was fixed on her. The reporters in the corner were frantically typing, cameras rolling, phones recording. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. The impossible was happening before everyone's eyes. A police dog, trained to obey commands, was defying orders to protect a civilian because he recognized her. And Emily knew why. She had been silent for years about the volunteer trauma program, the abuse she had endured as a teenager, the secret connection to the animal rescue network, and the fleeting but powerful bond she had formed with Coda. Now, in a room full of skeptics and law enforcement officials, that secret was screaming to the surface, impossible to hide. Morrison stepped closer, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. This doesn't make sense. You're telling me a civilian can." Emily cut him off, voice steady but trembling slightly. "I didn't tell him to do anything. He knows I'm in danger." The courtroom equivalent tension in the station was palpable. Hale stepped forward, almost pleading. "Sir, if you proceed, you risk. I don't even know. I've never seen Coda react like this. He's detecting something real, something serious." Detective Morrison's face was red with anger and disbelief. He barked, "Emily, if this is a trick, it won't work. The dog obeys me." Coda barked once firmly, decisively. Not at Emily, not at the walls, at Morrison. The sound was sharp, controlled, and terrifying. Every officer in the room froze. Emily swallowed hard, realizing that the dog's instincts weren't just protective, they were warning. Her pulse thundered, fear and relief mingling into a cocktail that made her hands tremble. She had survived so much in life by being careful, by hiding, by keeping secrets. But this was different. This was outside of control, outside of everything she had ever known. For the first time, Emily felt power, not the kind that came from fear, but the kind that came from the truth finally aligning with justice, however strange the path. Coda, the dog she had once comforted as a trembling puppy, was now her shield in a world that wanted to destroy her. And the detectives, reporters and bystanders were powerless to stop what was happening. Morrison took a deep breath, trying to regain authority, but his voice wavered. "We need to review this. We need." Emily interrupted again, soft but firm. "You won't find anything, because I didn't do anything wrong. He's showing you that." Coda nudged her hand one last time, sat, and stared at the officers, unwavering. The tension in the room became almost unbearable. The impossible was unfolding, and the ramifications were just beginning to surface. Emily's mind raced, knowing that the next steps, investigations, courtrooms, police interviews, would be shaped not just by her words, but by the unmistakable truth in Coda's eyes. And as she sat, handcuffed yet strangely unafraid, she realized one thing. This dog had just changed everything. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to choke on. Every officer, reporter, and onlooker held their breath as Coda sat in front of Emily, tail still wagging slightly, eyes locked on her face like he had known her his entire life. Emily's chest heaved. Adrenaline coursed through her veins like molten metal. She knew what she had just done, the whisper of two words that no one else would have understood, but she had no idea how it would play out next. Detective Morrison leaned forward, scowling, voice tight with disbelief. "This is impossible. Dogs don't, he doesn't, he obeys us, not civilians. That's basic protocol." Hale, Coda's handler, ran a hand over his face, eyes wide and nervous. I don't know how to explain this. That command, it isn't in his active training anymore. Not here, not in police work. It's..." Emily's mind raced. She remembered the puppy she had once comforted years ago, a frightened, trembling bundle of fur with enormous brown eyes, and the special trauma cues they had used to teach him safety, to calm him, to show him trust. Those cues weren't standard police commands. They were signals of recognition, safety, and memory. She swallowed hard and tried to calm her racing heart. He's not alerting to me being guilty. He's alerting to me being in danger," she said quietly. Her voice was trembling but steady enough to hold the room's attention. "He knows someone is lying. Someone is trying to hurt me." Morrison's face contorted, a mix of anger and confusion. "What the hell are you talking about? You think this dog, what? He can read minds?" Emily shook her head. "No, he can read fear and coercion. He reacts to trauma and danger. That's why he's sitting here instead of attacking me like you expect him to. He knows the truth." A murmur ran through the officers. The reporters leaned forward, pens and cameras poised. Some officers whispered to each other, exchanging incredulous glances. Hale looked pale, his knuckles white around the leash. Morrison slammed his fist on the table. "You're delusional. He obeys me. He's trained to obey my commands. You're trying to manipulate him somehow, and it's not going to work." Coda's low growl interrupted him, the sound vibrating through the room like a warning bell. The growl was subtle, controlled, precise, an unmistakable signal that he was prepared to defend Emily. The officers froze. The air thickened with tension as if the room itself had drawn a breath and was holding it. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper, her own fear tempered by a strange, growing certainty. "Sit." The command was one of those two words she had whispered before, simple but deeply ingrained. Coda obeyed instantly, sinking onto his haunches, tail wagging lightly, eyes still never leaving hers. Every officer in the room stared in disbelief. Hale's jaw dropped. I can't believe that worked," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Morrison's face was red with anger, frustration, and confusion. "That's impossible. You don't even know him. That command shouldn't work." Emily's gaze was calm but piercing. "I do know him," she said softly, "because I trained him years ago. I was a volunteer at the youth trauma unit where he started his training. I taught him those words. I comforted him. I was there when he learned to trust people me." The room went silent. Every eye was on her. The murmurs stopped. Even the reporters seemed frozen in place, their pens hovering over notepads. The revelation was shocking. A civilian, a young nurse with no criminal record, had somehow mastered a command that no one else should have known. A command that Coda, the flawless police dog, responded to instantly, defying his training and instincts for law enforcement obedience. Hale swallowed hard. It's possible," he said quietly, almost as if he were afraid to be overheard. "But I've never seen him respond to anyone else outside of that program, not in years." Emily nodded, her hands still cuffed, her nerves taut. "He remembered me. He remembered safety. He remembered someone he could trust, and right now I'm the only one he trusts in this room." Detective Morrison's scowl deepened, but the color had drained from his face. He stepped closer, voice low and sharp. "All right, fine. Explain yourself. How does this dog know you? And why are you suddenly so sure of yourself?" Emily took a deep breath. Every muscle in her body was tense. She needed to be careful. Any wrong word could undo everything. But the truth was a powerful thing, and it had a way of revealing itself, especially when paired with instinct. "I can't explain it fully without going back years," she said, voice trembling slightly but growing stronger. "When I was 16, I volunteered at a program that helped abused kids and animals. Coda, he was one of the dogs there, frightened, shy, scared of everything. I was the one who helped him learn commands, trust, and safety. I used specific words that only he and I would respond to. Those words aren't in police training, they're memory cues, trauma cues, safety cues." The murmurs grew louder. Officers whispered to each other, skeptical but intrigued. The reporters' cameras clicked incessantly. Every eye was glued to the scene. Morrison's hands were on his hips, jaw tight. "So you're saying this dog recognized you after all these years? That you just whispered some words and he obeyed you instead of me?" Emily nodded. "Exactly. And not just that, he's signaling that I'm in danger. He knows someone is lying about me. He knows the truth." Hale's face paled further. He's detecting coercion. That's not something most police dogs can do outside of specialized training, and even then only under controlled conditions. The fact that he's doing it here in real time, it's unprecedented. Morrison's eyes darted to Coda, then back to Emily. This can't be happening. It doesn't make sense. Dogs don't. Coda barked, sharply and deliberately cutting him off. His gaze shifted slightly toward the other officers, a warning, a signal that he was alert, protective, and ready to defend Emily at all costs. Emily's heart raced, adrenaline surging. She realized that the situation had shifted entirely. The dog was no longer just an officer's tool, it was a witness, a protector, a bridge between truth and deception. She leaned forward slightly, despite the cuffs biting into her wrists. Her voice was soft, but every word carried weight. He's not here for you. He's here for me. And if you continue to press this, you're going to find out the hard way that you're on the wrong side. The room fell silent again. Even Morrison's scowl faltered under the weight of the moment. The reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the drama as it unfolded in real time. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with anticipation. Every person in the room could feel it. Something monumental was about to happen. And Emily knew that the next steps, the next investigation, would change everything. She had survived the arrest, defied expectation, and now held the truth in her hands, though Coda's instincts had done more to protect her than any human ever could. For the first time since she was taken into custody, she felt a glimmer of hope, sharp, electrifying, and dangerous. Coda, the dog she had comforted as a trembling puppy, had just defied years of training to protect her. And Emily realized one thing with terrifying clarity. The courtroom, the investigation, and even Coda himself were about to reveal secrets no one could have anticipated. Because in that room, under the harsh fluorescent lights, the truth was no longer hidden. It had a heartbeat, a growl, and a pair of unwavering eyes staring back at anyone foolish enough to threaten her. The tension in the Westfield police station had thickened into something almost tangible, like smoke curling through the fluorescent-lit room. Emily Grayson sat upright, her wrists aching from the cuffs but her posture fierce, unwavering. Coda remained glued to her side, massive frame poised and alert, his gaze locked on her like a silent guardian. Every officer, detective, and reporter in the room could feel the charge of the moment, each second stretching impossibly long. Detective Morrison wiped the sweat from his brow, jaw tight, eyes darting between Emily and Coda. This isn't normal, it can't be. He doesn't do this. Police dogs don't. Hale, the dog's handler, took a deep breath and ran a hand down his face. Sir, I think it's time I tell the truth. The room froze. Every person turned to him, sensing the weight in his tone. Hale's hands were trembling slightly, and his usual calm demeanor had vanished. He swallowed hard, then began. Coda, he's not just a standard police dog. Not anymore. He's been trained for years in advanced detection, trauma response, and behavioral analysis. Most of his work is with explosives, narcotics, or tracking. But a long time ago, he was part of a special program. A volunteer program that paired at-risk youth and abused animals with trained handlers for therapy and trauma recovery. Morrison's eyes narrowed. Go on, this isn't the time for a history lesson. Hale continued, voice trembling but firm. Emily, you said words that only Coda would recognize. Words from a program that he trained in years ago. I didn't realize it at first, but watching him respond the way he did, it's not obedience, it's memory. Recognition, trust, trauma cues, and it's something no one in active police training knew he would respond to, especially not you, Emily. No civilian should have that influence over a K-9 trained for law enforcement. The murmurs in the room rose again. Reporters leaned forward, pens and cameras at the ready, capturing every detail of Hale's confession. Emily's pulse raced. She could feel the incredulity and disbelief swirling around her, but deep inside she also felt vindicated. Coda wasn't lying. She hadn't imagined it. Hale's voice cracked slightly. He remembered you, that's why he stayed. That's why he refused to obey certain commands. And that's why, and this is the hard part, that's why he reacted the way he did toward some of the officers. He recognized danger, real danger, and he knew you were at risk. Morrison slammed his fist onto the table, his face red with anger and confusion. This is ridiculous. You're saying a dog trained for police work recognized a civilian as being in danger, and somehow he remembered her from years ago. Yes, Hale said quietly. I didn't want to believe it at first either, but it's true. Coda is trained to read fear, coercion, and trauma. When he senses someone lying or someone in danger, he reacts. And right now, he's signaling that Emily isn't guilty, that someone is manipulating this situation. Emily's chest tightened. Her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling from adrenaline and relief. He's telling the truth. He's showing you the truth. And I didn't have to do anything. He saw it himself. The reporters scribbled furiously, recording every word. Phones lit up, cameras clicked, and the tension in the room became almost unbearable. The officers whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some stunned. Hale's revelation had shifted the balance entirely. The K-9, once seen as an instrument of the law, had become a witness in a case where the law itself had faltered. Morrison's face hardened. So, what you're telling me is, we arrested her on evidence that might not even exist, that the dog is siding with her. Hale swallowed. I don't think it's siding. He's not choosing sides. He's detecting reality, danger, coercion, lies, and he's showing it. Emily's eyes flicked toward Coda, who let out a low, almost imperceptible whine, pressing his massive head gently against her hand. The gesture was soft, intimate, protective. It was a silent reaffirmation. He was on her side because he had recognized the danger long before anyone else. Morrison leaned back, running a hand through his hair. The scowl hadn't left his face, but his voice had softened, tinged with disbelief. This is unprecedented. No one has ever. Hale interrupted, his voice sharper now, tinged with urgency. Sir, you need to understand. If we proceed without acknowledging this, if we continue this arrest based on evidence that may have been manipulated or planted, you risk not only Emily's life but the integrity of the entire investigation. Coda's instincts are not wrong. He's never wrong. And he's telling us that something is off, something big. Emily's heart pounded. Every word Hale spoke validated the truth she had been trying to convey, the truth that had been buried under false accusations, fear, and a life upended by someone else's lies. For the first time, she felt seen, understood, not by the officers, not by the reporters, but by the one being who had always known her, Coda. The room held its collective breath. Even the reporters sensed it. A revelation was unfolding that would ripple far beyond this police station. Emily could feel it in her bones. Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice as though speaking to her alone. I've never seen anything like this, Emily. He's never reacted this way for anyone else. You've got to be careful. He's showing you what's coming. Emily nodded slowly, her voice firm despite her racing heartbeat. I understand. I won't let it happen again. Morrison, still skeptical but shaken, finally spoke, voice tight with tension. If what you're saying is true, then we have a huge problem. Someone is lying and we've been going after the wrong person. This could be a massive scandal. Hale's hands trembled as he spoke. It's already a scandal waiting to happen, and if we don't act carefully, someone's going to get hurt. Coda, he's telling us the truth, and we ignore it at our own peril. Emily's mind raced. Danger, lies, manipulation, all of it was real. All of it was coming for her, but now she had an ally stronger than anyone had imagined. A loyal, intelligent, instinct-driven guardian in the form of a dog. Morrison leaned back in his chair, face pale and tight with tension. All right, he said finally, voice low and controlled. We need to review everything, every piece of evidence, every statement. And you, he said, pointing at Emily, are staying put until we get to the bottom of this. Emily exhaled slowly, letting the tension in her shoulders ease just slightly. She knew that the investigation wasn't over, that danger still lurked around every corner. But for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Coda had confirmed what she had known in her heart all along. She was innocent, and someone else was orchestrating the chaos around her. Hale knelt beside her, whispering softly so only she could hear. "Be ready, this isn't over. Coda knows more than we do, and he's going to guide us." Emily reached down, running her hand over Coda's massive head. His eyes met hers, intelligent, loyal, unwavering. The bond that had started years ago when both had been vulnerable and untested had endured. And now, in the midst of a storm that threatened to engulf her, that bond was stronger than ever. The room remained tense, every officer, reporter, and observer acutely aware that something monumental had just shifted. Coda's instincts, Hale's confession, and Emily's quiet confidence had rewritten the rules of the game. The truth was no longer hidden. It was alive, present, and dangerously close to breaking into daylight. And Emily realized, as she sat with Coda by her side, that the next chapter of this story would change everything. The investigation, the courtroom, and the city's understanding of innocence, loyalty, and justice. Because now everyone knew one thing: Coda had chosen to protect Emily, and nothing in the world would stop him from revealing the truth. The fluorescent lights of the Westfield police station cast long, jagged shadows across the walls, but Emily Grayson barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on Coda, the massive German shepherd sitting loyally at her side, eyes alert, yet soft with recognition. She could feel the dog's calm strength, the silent assurance that he was not just a companion, but a shield. The room, tense with law enforcement officials and reporters, felt charged with electricity. Every second seemed stretched, every glance heavy with unspoken questions. Emily's wrists still throbbed from the handcuffs, but her chest burned with determination. This was the moment she had avoided for years, the moment she had hidden from, even from herself. The truth she had buried deep inside her heart, the one memory she had convinced herself didn't matter, was now the key to survival. Detective Morrison leaned forward in his chair, his expression a mixture of anger, confusion, and disbelief. "All right, Grayson," he said, voice tight. "You've claimed Coda recognizes you. Your words somehow controlled him. But this is a police station, a courtroom for evidence. If you're lying or exaggerating, you're wasting our time. Now tell us exactly what you're hiding." Emily's lips parted, then closed again. Her throat felt dry, tight, like sandpaper. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but now that it was here, the words refused to come. Hale's hand brushed against Coda's leash, a subtle reassurance, and Emily inhaled deeply, drawing in courage she hadn't realized she still possessed. I need to tell the truth," she began softly, voice trembling yet growing stronger with each word. "Years ago, when I was 16, I volunteered at a program for at-risk youths and abused animals. Coda, he was one of the dogs there. He had been neglected, abused, and frightened of everything. I was assigned to him. At first, he wouldn't trust anyone, not the handlers, not the other volunteers, not even me. But I stayed. I learned his fears, his cues, his signals. I comforted him. I taught him specific words, phrases, gestures that meant safety, trust, and recognition. Words that no one else knew." The room fell silent. Even the reporters' cameras clicked less frequently, pens froze in midair. Every officer leaned in slightly, some skeptical, some visibly stunned. Hale's eyes widened, voice catching in his throat. That's impossible," he whispered. "I never realized she was the same person. He's never reacted like this outside of controlled training with her cues." Emily swallowed hard, continuing despite the trembling in her hands. "I trained him. I comforted him when he was scared. I stayed when others left. And somehow he remembered me all these years. He remembered the words, the trust, the bond. When I said those 2 words today, he recognized me immediately. Not because I commanded him, but because he trusted me and because he knew something was wrong. Detective Morrison's jaw tightened. His voice was low, edged with frustration. So, let me get this straight. You're telling us that this dog remembered you from 16 years ago, after all the training he's had as a police dog, and he's making the decision to protect you instead of obeying lawful commands. Emily nodded, her voice firmer now. Exactly. He's not obeying out of defiance, he's obeying instinct. He's telling you the truth. He knows I'm not guilty, and he's showing you the danger I'm in. Hale shifted uncomfortably, staring at Coda, whose gaze remained locked on Emily's face, unwavering. It's unprecedented, he said quietly, almost to himself. I've never seen anything like it in my career. Morrison slammed a fist on the table. This is absurd. A civilian influencing a trained K-9 in a police investigation. It's insane. Emily leaned forward slightly, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. It's not insane. It's truth. Coda is trained to detect danger, trauma, and deceit. When he reacts, it's because he senses something humans often miss. And right now, he's sensing that I am innocent and someone else is trying to manipulate the evidence against me. The reporters' phones clicked furiously as cameras captured every tense moment. Whispers rippled through the room. Some officers shook their heads in disbelief, while others shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the implications of Emily's revelation were enormous. If she were telling the truth, the investigation itself was compromised, and an innocent life was at stake. Hale stepped closer to Emily, his voice hushed. She's telling the truth. Coda is never wrong. When he detects danger, he reacts. And right now, he's reacting to threats we don't yet see. The cues she gave him, those words, aren't commands. They're recognition, memory, trauma signals. He remembered her. He trusts her. And that's why he's protecting her instead of obeying standard commands. Emily's heart raced as she felt the weight of the moment. Her past, painful, hidden, private, was no longer a secret. The bond she had formed with Coda as a frightened 16-year-old girl was now the key to her survival. She reached down, brushing her hand over his massive head. His eyes flickered with recognition, loyalty, and reassurance. Morrison's face was pale, lips pressed into a thin line. This changes everything. If your story is true, then the evidence we've been following, it might not even be valid. Someone could be manipulating the investigation. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper, trembling but sharp. They are. Someone is trying to frame me, but Coda, he's showing the truth. And if you don't listen, someone is going to get hurt. Someone already has. The room fell silent again. Every person felt the shift, the weight of the revelation pressing down. For the first time, Emily felt a surge of empowerment. She had survived the arrest, defied impossible odds, and now held the truth in her hands. A truth reinforced by instinct, loyalty, and the bond she had formed with a dog no one else could manipulate. Hale's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. She's right. Coda is not just following commands, he's leading us to the truth. If we ignore him, we risk everything. Morrison leaned back, a long pause stretching into eternity. Finally, his voice was measured, cautious, tinged with reluctant respect. All right, we review the evidence, every statement, every lead. And you, he pointed at Emily, voice firm but not hostile, stay exactly where you are. You're under protection now because this dog, he's telling us you're in danger. Emily exhaled slowly, the tension in her body easing just slightly. She had survived the storm of skepticism, disbelief, and accusation. She had revealed the truth she had buried for years. And now, Coda, the dog she had nurtured as a scared teenager, was her ally in a world that had turned against her. As Hale adjusted the leash, Coda nudged Emily gently with his massive snout, a gesture of reassurance, loyalty, and warning all at once. Emily met his eyes and whispered softly, the words carrying more weight than any plea to the courtroom or officer. We'll get through this, together. The reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the drama as it unfolded in real time. Officers whispered among themselves, realizing that the narrative had shifted entirely. The dog, once a mere tool of law enforcement, had become a witness, protector, and symbol of truth. And Emily, for the first time in years, felt a sense of purpose, clarity, and resolve. The truth she had buried for so long was finally free. And with Coda by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next: courtroom battles, investigations, and the exposure of secrets that had haunted her since her teenage years. Because one thing was certain: the world was about to see what she had always known. Coda was not just a police dog, he was a protector, a witness, a living testament to the truth. And Emily was finally ready to confront the lies, the danger, and the shadow that had followed her for years. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, its stone steps worn by decades of hurried footsteps and whispered secrets. Emily Grayson's heels clicked against the polished floor as she was escorted into the courtroom, cuffs replaced with a discreet ankle bracelet, though the weight of the situation pressed heavier than any chain. Coda walked beside her, massive, calm, and vigilant, his presence a living testament to the chaos that had erupted weeks earlier. The courtroom was packed. Cameras from every news outlet snapped photos, microphones hovered, and spectators craned to catch a glimpse of the woman whose story had gripped the city. The murmurs were electric, almost unbearable. Emily could feel their curiosity and judgment in waves as she stepped toward the defense table. Hale followed close behind, leash in hand, his gaze flicking to the judge and the jury as if calculating the best moment to intervene should Coda act. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for no-nonsense decisions, peered over her glasses. "Ms. Grayson," she said, her voice clipped, "we are here to hear testimony regarding your alleged involvement in the events that occurred on March 14th. You may remove your coat and stand as needed." Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She glanced down at Coda. The dog's ears flicked, his eyes meeting hers with that unspoken promise. They were a team, and they would face this storm together. The prosecution wasted no time. They presented the evidence: fingerprints, supposed witness statements, security footage. Every piece was meticulously laid out, designed to create a narrative that left Emily framed as culpable, cornered, and desperate. The visuals were precise, the narrative smooth, yet beneath the surface it was hollow. When the prosecutor leaned forward, eyes cold and sharp, he gestured at Emily. "Ms. Grayson, the evidence is overwhelming. Multiple witnesses place you at the scene. Your fingerprints were found on the property. How do you explain this?" Emily drew a deep breath, feeling the heat of the cameras and the weight of every gaze in the room. She could feel the tension rising like a storm, yet she refused to let it break her. "I wasn't there in the way you think," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I didn't commit any crime. Some of the evidence has been manipulated, and I have someone here who can verify that, someone who saw what truly happened." All eyes turned to Coda, who remained seated at her side, tail low but alert, head slightly tilted, as if assessing the prosecutor with a mix of caution and recognition. A ripple of shock ran through the courtroom. A police K-9, present in court as part of a civilian defense. It was unprecedented, and every person in the room could feel the tension ratchet higher. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting a dog is a witness?" Emily nodded, swallowing the surge of fear in her chest. "Not a witness in the conventional sense. He doesn't speak or testify, but he reacts to truth, to danger, to coercion. He recognizes what humans might miss. He's trained for detection, behavioral cues, trauma signals, and threat recognition. And right now, he's telling us something crucial: I am innocent." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Reporters whispered to each other. The jury exchanged incredulous glances. Even the prosecution seemed momentarily stunned. Hale stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, Coda's reactions are scientifically validated. He has been trained in advanced trauma response, detection, and behavioral recognition. His behavior today is consistent with a recognition of truth and the presence of threat." The judge's eyes narrowed. "I've never had a K-9 presented as evidence in a criminal case," she said, voice tight. "This is highly irregular." Emily leaned slightly toward Coda, whispering softly, "Stay with me." Coda's massive head tilted slightly, ears flicking. He sat closer, a living shield of calm and vigilance, his instincts focused entirely on her. The prosecution attempted to proceed, calling witnesses and presenting security footage that appeared damning. But as they spoke, Coda reacted in subtle yet undeniable ways, growling softly at individuals attempting to deceive, stiffening when the narrative twisted toward falsehood, nudging Emily gently whenever the truth was misrepresented. Each reaction was precise, controlled, and deliberate. The courtroom noticed. The reporters' pens moved furiously, some whispered into microphones. The tension ratcheted higher with every second. The first witness took the stand, a supposed eyewitness who claimed to have seen Emily at the scene. The witness's voice was confident, rehearsed, but as they recounted details, Coda's ears pricked, low growls rumbled in his chest, and his body stiffened. Emily's pulse quickened. The dog's reactions were subtle but unmistakable. He was signaling deception. The prosecutor glanced at Hale, frowning. "Is that normal?" Hale's voice was taut with concern. "No, that is not normal. He's responding to dishonesty. He detects coercion, fear, and manipulation. Right now, he's reacting to this witness because something is off. He's signaling that the statements are not truthful." The witness froze mid-sentence, sweat forming on their brow, eyes flicking nervously to the dog. Even the jury noticed, glancing at Coda with growing unease. The tension in the room became almost unbearable, every heartbeat loud against the silence that had fallen. Emily exhaled slowly. Her voice was calm, steady, though her heart pounded. "The truth doesn't need to be shouted. It exists and it shows itself." The judge leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. "This is extraordinary, but the court will not be intimidated by theatrics. We will proceed." The second witness, a security guard, took the stand. As he recounted his account, Coda's nose twitched, and he stepped closer to Emily, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of protection and warning. The dog's instincts were drawing attention to inconsistencies, forcing the courtroom to pause and reconsider. Emily's mind raced. This was her moment to expose the truth, the lies, the manipulation, the real danger that had been lurking in the shadows for years. Coda was her living proof, her silent witness, and her shield against the corruption that threatened to destroy her. Hale leaned closer and whispered, voice low, "He's ready, trust him." Emily nodded subtly. She rose from her seat, careful and deliberate, her voice ringing clear across the courtroom. Coda's reactions are not random, they are precise. He reacts to truth and danger, and his behavior right now is telling all of us that I am innocent, that someone else is behind this, and that the evidence presented is misleading. He doesn't lie. He cannot be fooled, and the person who framed me is still out there. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. The judge slammed her gavel lightly, calling for order. The jury leaned forward, captivated, tension crackling in the air. The prosecutors looked shaken, forced to contend with a truth that could not be ignored, a dog's instincts, sharper than human intuition, exposing the fractures in their narrative. Emily took a deep breath, letting her gaze sweep across the room. She had survived arrests, lies, and manipulation. She had survived fear and the threat of being silenced. And now she was standing tall, shielded by Coda, a living testament to loyalty, truth, and instinct. Her voice dropped, steady and firm. "The truth doesn't lie, and today we all see it. Coda sees it. I've been telling the truth all along, and now the truth is here, undeniable." A heavy silence fell. Cameras clicked furiously. The jury, the judge, the officers, and the spectators all felt it. The courtroom had shifted, tension reaching its peak. The story, once hidden behind false accusations and fear, was now unstoppable. And Emily knew one thing with certainty: the next moments would change everything. The courtroom would never be the same. The investigation would unravel. The person responsible for the lies and manipulation would be exposed. All eyes were on her, all attention on Coda, and the city would soon understand the power of loyalty, trust, and instinct. Because in that courtroom, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Emily realized the undeniable truth. Sometimes the smallest voice, be it human or canine, could reveal the most dangerous secrets. And Coda, her silent, steadfast partner, was about to show the world exactly what he knew. The courtroom buzzed with unease. Emily Grayson remained seated, her back straight, her hands lightly resting on the table. Coda sat at her side, massive and poised, eyes flicking from her to the spectators and back, a silent sentinel against the invisible currents of deceit swirling in the room. The jury leaned forward in their seats, tense and captivated. The prosecution whispered to each other, shifting uneasily as Hale whispered to the judge, quietly outlining Coda's behavior. For the first time, everyone in that room felt the weight of uncertainty. The dog was more than a companion. He was an arbiter of truth, sensing lies and detecting danger in ways human eyes could not. And the truth, Emily realized, was about to hit harder than anyone could imagine. The judge's gavel slammed down with a sharp rap. "Order! Order in the court! Ms. Grayson, you may proceed with your testimony, but this court expects clarity and precision." Emily exhaled slowly, trying to steady her nerves. Her pulse pounded like a drumbeat in her chest, adrenaline sparking in every vein. She knew the next step was critical. This wasn't just about proving innocence. It was about exposing the person who had orchestrated the deception that had nearly destroyed her life. She glanced at Coda. His ears twitched slightly, nostrils flaring and tail swishing almost imperceptibly. The subtle signals told her one thing: the threat was still here. The danger hadn't left. Emily stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, the events leading to my arrest were manipulated by someone with access to both the evidence and the investigation. They knew exactly what to plant, what to erase, and how to frame me. But they did not account for Coda's instincts. He has been trained to detect fear, trauma, and coercion. And today, he's telling us that the person responsible is in this room, closer than any of us realized." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The spectators leaned forward, reporters whispered to each other, and the jury exchanged uneasy glances. Even the prosecution stiffened, a flicker of unease crossing their faces. Detective Morrison's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting someone in this courtroom is lying deliberately?" Emily nodded. "Yes, someone who has been manipulating evidence, coaching witnesses, and using my absence to their advantage. And Coda, he's already responding to them. He recognizes the danger, the deceit, the coercion. That's why he's focused the way he is. This is someone who is desperate to keep the truth hidden." Hale's voice broke the tense silence, quiet but firm. "Your Honor, I've never seen him react this strongly. Not in controlled exercises, not in field work, not ever. His focus on certain individuals in this courtroom indicates a clear recognition of threat. The behavior is consistent with detecting deception and danger at a high level." Emily's gaze swept across the room. She saw a man sitting near the back, fidgeting with his tie, eyes darting nervously every time Coda shifted or growled softly. Something about his demeanor was off, not just anxious, but calculated, defensive, like a predator sensing exposure. She took a deep breath and spoke slowly, deliberately. "That man," she said, pointing subtly without directly accusing him, "has been orchestrating the lies against me. He has access, authority, and the means to manipulate the evidence. And right now, Coda is signaling that he knows the truth." The man stiffened, his face blanching. He glanced at the judge, then at the officers, but his eyes betrayed panic. A low murmur of confusion spread through the spectators and jury. Some whispered, pointing toward the man, while others leaned in to capture every movement on their cameras. Coda shifted slightly, a low, deliberate growl vibrating from his chest, directed squarely at the man. Every person in the courtroom could feel it, a palpable warning that cut through the chatter. Hale stepped forward, voice urgent. Your Honor, Coda is trained to indicate threats and deception. His growl is controlled, purposeful. This is not aggression, it's recognition. He's signaling that the person he's focused on is responsible for the manipulation of evidence and the framing of Ms. Grayson. Emily's heart pounded. This was it, the moment when the hidden threat would be unmasked. She knew she had to act carefully, not with anger but with measured clarity, letting the courtroom see the truth through Coda's instincts and her words. Your Honor, Emily said, her voice steady, I've lived in fear of this person for years. They've manipulated every step, hoping no one would notice. But Coda, he remembers the truth. He knows me, he knows the signs of manipulation, and he's exposing the danger now. If we don't act carefully, more lives could be at risk. The courtroom went silent. Reporters paused mid-note. Even the judge leaned forward, eyes narrowed, recognizing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Detective Morrison shifted uneasily, now fully aware that the game had changed. The dog, once just a tool of law enforcement, was now the key witness against someone who had hidden in plain sight. The man at the back of the courtroom fidgeted again, glancing nervously at Coda. Hale noticed the subtle signals, the slight step back, the hand tightening around a briefcase, the shallow, controlled breathing. Coda's instincts were precise, calibrated, and unerring. The danger was clear and everyone could sense it. Emily's voice rose slightly, commanding attention without raising anger. The person who orchestrated this believed no one would see through their lies, but Coda sees, he knows, and he's showing us now. The evidence against me is false, planted, and manipulated. The real danger is still here in this room. The man's face tightened. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He swallowed hard, eyes flicking to the judge, then to the officers. Panic, barely concealed, flashed across his face. Coda's growl deepened slightly, a low, resonant warning that made every person in the room freeze. The judge's gavel struck sharply. Silence. Everyone be seated. Officers, ensure security is present. We are pausing the proceedings immediately. Hale stepped closer to Emily, whispering, he knows Emily. He's recognized the threat, but stay calm. We handle this carefully or he could panic. Emily nodded, heart racing. She crouched slightly, placing a hand on Coda's head. It's okay, boy, we'll handle this together. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Every eye was on the unfolding drama, the revelation of a hidden manipulator, a dog's instincts, and a young woman who had survived years of fear and manipulation. The tension was electric, almost unbearable. And in that moment, Emily realized something terrifying and exhilarating. The game had changed. The hidden threat had been exposed, the lies were unraveling, and the courtroom was no longer just a place for testimony. It had become a battlefield of instinct, truth, and courage. Coda's growl subsided slightly as he remained alert, still focused on the man at the back. Every person in the room understood the unspoken truth. The real story, the dangerous story, was about to be revealed. Because in that moment, the courtroom and the city beyond would witness that the smallest voice, the silent growl of a dog, and the courage of a girl who had once been invisible, could topple deception and uncover a threat no one had anticipated. The tension was unbearable, the stakes impossibly high. And Emily knew one thing with certainty. The hidden threat had emerged and nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom was electric. Silence and anticipation hung in the air like a storm about to break. Emily Grayson sat at the defense table, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the man at the back of the room, the one whose panic had been exposed by Coda's instincts. He sat rigid, fists clenched, trying to project calm but failing entirely. Every subtle movement betrayed guilt, and the courtroom, now on edge, seemed to sense it too. Coda remained at Emily's side, massive frame alert, ears forward, tail low and controlled. He was a sentinel, a living witness, his instincts sharper than any human intuition. Hale's hand rested lightly on Coda's leash, ready to intervene if the tension escalated, but the dog's restraint was deliberate. The danger was clear, yet under control. Judge Whittaker leaned forward in her chair, her eyes narrowing at the man who had been quietly fidgeting. "Sir," she said, her voice sharp, "you appear extremely uncomfortable. Is there something you would like to explain to the court?" The man's face went pale, sweat forming along his temples. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He swallowed hard, finally speaking in a voice that trembled, betraying the calm he tried to maintain. I. Emily stood, her voice firm, commanding attention without accusation. "Your Honor, he's the one who manipulated the evidence, coached witnesses, and orchestrated the attempt to frame me. Coda has been signaling the truth for weeks, and now it's obvious to everyone in this room." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, cameras clicking, microphones catching every word. The jury exchanged astonished glances. Even the prosecution stiffened, caught off guard by the revelation. Hale stepped forward, voice calm but authoritative. "Your Honor, Coda's behavior is consistent with recognition of threat and detection of deception. He has never reacted like this for anyone else. His reactions today confirm the presence of manipulation, coercion, and guilt. The man at the back of the courtroom is the orchestrator of the false evidence against Ms. Grayson." The man's composure finally cracked. His face turned red, then pale, and he shook his head violently. "This is insane. A dog he can't determine guilt. This is ridiculous." Coda growled low in his chest, a deliberate, controlled warning. The sound reverberated through the courtroom, sharp and undeniable. Every person froze. The jury leaned forward, captivated and unnerved. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Order," she commanded. But even she could feel the power of the moment, the truth, undeniable and raw, emanating from the dog's instincts. Emily's voice rang clear. "It's not ridiculous. He detects the truth, the same way a witness might observe a lie. He has been trained for this. And right now, he's showing us the danger and the deception we have ignored for too long." The man at the back of the room swayed slightly, panic overtaking his carefully maintained facade. Detective Morrison rose from his seat, his voice measured but sharp. "Sir, step forward. Now, you are under investigation for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. Any further attempts to deny the facts will be recorded and used in court." The man's eyes darted to Coda, then to Emily, then back to the judge. Every instinct screamed danger, every reaction betrayed him. The courtroom felt like it was holding its collective breath. The tension was palpable, almost unbearable. Finally, with a shaking hand, he stepped forward, voice quivering. "Fine, yes, I did it. I orchestrated it all. I thought no one would notice. I thought she would take the fall. But I didn't expect the dog to." His words faltered as Coda's eyes met his, calm yet commanding, unyielding. The man's bravado crumbled completely. Emily's chest tightened. This was the culmination of years of fear, manipulation, and silence. The truth she had buried, nurtured through patience and courage, was now revealed. She could feel the tension in the room begin to release, like a held breath finally exhaled. Hale's voice, low and steady, filled the room. "Your Honor, Coda has been a witness in the only way a dog can be, a detector of deception and threat. His reactions, trained and precise, have exposed the individual responsible for falsifying evidence and manipulating the case against Ms. Grayson." The judge leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. "This is unprecedented, but the confession is clear, and the evidence corroborated by expert testimony regarding the K9's behavior validates the claim. Ms. Grayson, you are hereby cleared of all charges related to the March 14th incident. The court finds that the evidence against you was fabricated and manipulated." A ripple of astonishment ran through the courtroom. Gasps, whispers, and even tears of relief from those who had followed Emily's case filled the room. Reporters scrambled, capturing the historic moment as cameras flashed. Hale knelt briefly beside Coda, stroking his massive head, whispering words of praise. The dog's tail wagged slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of victory and justice served. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. I've spent years being afraid, being silenced, and being accused of something I didn't do. But today, the truth has been seen. And thanks to Coda, thanks to Hale, and thanks to everyone who believed in justice, I am free. Detective Morrison approached cautiously, nodding in respect. Ms. Grayson, I underestimated the situation. This has been extraordinary. I apologize for the oversight and I commend your courage and Coda. Emily smiled faintly, glancing down at Coda, who nuzzled her hand. It's more than courage. It's trust, loyalty, and recognizing the truth when it's in front of you. The man who had orchestrated the deception was escorted from the courtroom, his shoulders slumped, defeated and humiliated. The jurors whispered among themselves, processing the unprecedented events they had witnessed. The revelation that a dog, trained with love and trust, had revealed the truth in a way no human witness could replicate. Emily took a deep breath, letting the tension release from her body. Years of fear, frustration, and silence were finally replaced with relief, vindication, and a sense of justice. She looked at Hale and whispered, voice soft but firm, "We did it. We finally did it." Hale nodded, eyes glinting with pride. "He did it. You did it together, and now the world knows the truth." Coda's massive head rested on Emily's lap, eyes half closed in calm satisfaction. He had been her guardian, her witness, and her voice when none other could speak for her. And now, justice had been revealed, not by rhetoric, not by human intuition, but by instinct, trust, and loyalty. The courtroom slowly emptied, the reporters packing up, whispering about the extraordinary case that had captured the nation's attention. Emily walked out last, Hale at her side, Coda at her heels. The sunlight spilled onto the courthouse steps, warm and liberating, as if the world itself was acknowledging the truth finally brought to light. Emily paused for a moment, looking out over the city. The fear she had carried for so long, the lies and the danger were finally behind her. She inhaled deeply, letting the fresh air fill her lungs, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. Coda nudged her gently, and she smiled. For the first time in years, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. The hidden threat had been exposed, justice had been served, and the bond that had saved her life, a bond built on trust, courage, and a dog who had never wavered, was stronger than ever. Because in the end, Emily realized justice isn't always served by human hands alone. Sometimes it comes on four legs, with a heart full of loyalty and eyes that see beyond deception, fear, and lies. And Emily knew this truth would stay with her forever. She was free, and she owed it all to the dog who never let her face danger alone. The sun shone brighter on that courthouse steps that day, and for Emily, Hale, and Coda, it was more than light. It was the dawn of a life reclaimed, a story vindicated, and a bond that had changed everything.